All right, so in this video, I'm going to show more examples. This is the follow-up from the previous video of the introduction to algebra functions. So I'm going to take this function that comes in the PowerPoint, f of x equals 2 divided by x minus 4 plus 6 divided by 5 plus x. And I'm going to try to find what the domain of this function is. Remember that the domain is all of the available values on the x that have a correspondence in the y, that have a correspondence in the graph. All of the x values that are part of this graph. So remember that the first part of the result is always all the real numbers. So for every function, all the real numbers is the domain except, and then we have to find those exceptions. Sometimes there's exceptions, sometimes there's not, right? So the rule for an exception to exist is that I have to have denominators that have a variable. So if I have the denominators and I have a variable, I have to exclude one value per every denominator that I have in there. Because there's going to be one value that if I substitute into this function, it's going to cause me a division by 0, and this is going to kill the whole function. It's not going to have a correspondence in the graph. Okay, so let's take the first denominator. I'm going to take the first denominator and try to set it equal to 0. Not because I want it to be 0, but because I want to find which value upon substituting into this denominator is going to cause a division by 0. Once it causes a division by 0, it's going to kill the whole function. I'm not going to have a correspondence in the graph. So this is a really, really simple equation. I'm just going to add 4 to both sides. Those 4's cancel out. And the first value that I'm going to exclude from the domain is x equals 4. Okay, so if I substitute 4 into my function, or in other words, if I get f of 4, that means I'm going to replace all of the x's in my function for a number 4, and this on the first part is going to cause me a division by 0. And I don't really care about the other part. If I have a division by 0, this is going to kill the whole function, right? This means f of 4 or 4 does not have a correspondence in the graph. And I have to do the same thing for the second denominator or the next denominator, right? 5 plus x. So I'm going to take 5 plus x, and I'm going to set it equal to 0, not because I want it to be 0, but because I want to find which is the value that if I substitute into this function, it's going to give me a division by 0 on the second fraction. So how are we going to solve for this? Well, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Those 5's cancel out. So the result is x equals -5. So this is the next number that I have to exclude, from the domain. How so? Because if I try to find f of -5, so substitute -5 in my function, it's going to be -5 minus 4. This part of the function is going to be okay. But the second part is going to be it's going to cause me some problems in here. Okay, so 2 divided by -9, that's fine, plus 6 divided by 0. Now on this point, this is the fraction that's going to give me a division by 0, and this kills the whole function. The result is non-existent. So those are the only two values that I have to exclude from my domain, which is x equals 4 and x equals -5. Now, how am I going to report this result? Well, it helps me a lot to draw a line. I'm going to draw a line of numbers. That's my 0. This is my positive infinity. This is my negative infinity. So I'm going to say this is my domain of the function. What are all the values that are available in here? So I have to exclude the value of -5, and I have to exclude the value of 4. So it looks like those are the only numbers that are not part of my domain, which are the numbers that I previously found this by setting my denominators equal to 0. Okay, so those are the two numbers that are not part of the domain. So I have to include every other number. So if I include the first interval over here, what is going to be this interval from -infinity all the way to -5, and -5 is not part of the domain. That's why I put a parenthesis in there. The second set of numbers that's part of the domain, all the way from -5 to +4, not including 4 and not including -5. What does this mean in terms of the function? That if I substitute, for example, 0, which is a value that's right in between, I'm not going to get a division by 0, right? Let's do the test really quick over here, right? F of 0 is going to be 2 divided by, what does my function look like? 0 plus 4 plus 6 over 5 plus 0, And this is going to give me 2 over 4 plus 6 over 5. And if you add those two fractions, you're going to get a real number, a real correspondence in the graph. So that's how I know that 0 is part of the domain. That's why you have to include all of these numbers in between, which are what? Negative 4, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All of those numbers are also part of the domain, and they are enclosed into this interval. And the last interval of numbers that you have to include from 4 all the way to infinity, because 4 and infinity, and of course we use parentheses because those numbers are not part of my domain. So I'm going to make a sketch. I'm pretty sure this is not going to be exactly how those graphs look like. You can go to Desmos and plug in this equation and see what those look like. But I know they're not going to go through the -5 and they're not going to go through the 4. So if I can make a sketch of these lines, I don't know, I'm just going to make a sketch, right? It may or may not be correct, but this is a description of this, right? Of everything that we know up to now, that those lines are not going to touch the -5 and they're not going to touch the +4. Now, if you want to see how this graph looks like exactly, you may want to use a graphing calculator and plug in your original equation, right? F of x equals, I'm going to scroll up, 2 over x minus 4 plus 6 over 5 plus x. If you plug this into a graphing calculator, you're going to find the exact way that this graph looks like. Okay, and what we can know for sure is that it's not going to go through -5 and it's not going to go through +4.